Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This video will be a walk around of my 190E drift car slash race car that I've been building. I'm going to show what I've done so far on it and what the future plans are. I did mention it in my previous video where I took my C63 drifting. The reason I had to was because this car is obviously not ready yet, so don't forget to go and check out that video. This will be a walk around, kind of what I've done, what I'm planning to do. I have footage and video of other things that I have done on it that I will put out in future episodes, but this will be just kind of a general overview. The one thing I do want to mention right off the bat is this is the first time I've ever owned a 190E. I've never had one. I have no experience with the platform, so it's been a learning curve and an experience. There's very little information about it online. It's not as common of a built car, especially in the US, as something like an E36 or a 240. So it's been interesting, but I have learned a lot and I keep learning, and hopefully you'll join me on this journey of mine. One of the things you may have noticed already in the background is the car does have a brake upgrade. It is an OEM brake upgrade that you could do on these. Is something I actually managed to find on old forums of where people do 400E brakes on front and rear. That makes it a 4-piston setup up front and a 2-piston setup in the rear. I did do some little changes to make it look a little bit better aesthetically. That has been a video I have worked on, and I will release on everything you need to know to put these types of brakes on a 190E. Another big thing that I've done is I purchased Feel suspension. Feel, like what sponsors Odibachi's, the guy that owns the company. Surprisingly, looking around online, there's not very many aftermarket options for suspension, but Feel does make it, and considering I'm building this for a drift car, it was the perfect situation that actually Feel does make suspension components and aftermarket coilovers for a 190E. So I already have that installed. It is fully adjustable. As you can see, these are the top heads. It's got camber adjustments and dampening. I have them set up to full camber, and the reason for that is that the car also has an angle kit on it. So for the angle kit on this car, obviously there is, as expected, no aftermarket option like they do for other platforms that are a little bit more common. So it's something you do have to build yourself if you're planning on taking a 190E drifting. It is a little bit labor intensive, but what I did is I bought a complete new set of control arms that I hacked up and added length to make. So here's the look at the front suspension. As you can see, it is Feel suspension, and this is the angle kit. This is the portion that is extended that does give it tremendous amount of angle. What you have to do, this is my original control arm that I removed, and as you can tell, it, of course, being a car that's from 1990, did not make my life easy. I had to, heat and cut the control arms off to get them off the car in the first place. I had to buy new bolts. I did everything I could possibly to try to save the old ones, but they were so corroded in there, as this is aluminum and the bolts are metal. There was no alternative but to heat them up and bang them out of their spots on both sides. It definitely kicked my ass for something as simple as control arms, but it had to be done. The way the angle kit works is you cut right along here and you remove the ball joint and you move it out by 2 inches, and then you weld in a piece of pipe, thick steel, to extend it, and then I welded in reinforcements, and then this is what it looks like as a finished product. So that extends the angle by 2 inches and allows you to have significantly more steer angle. Thing I do want to work on that nobody has done that I could find online is right here where the tie rod bolts. This section actually bolts up by 2 bolts up here that holds the whole tie rod. I'd like to work with somebody that has CAD and be able to adjust where the ball joint mounts to be able to increase the steering angle a little bit more. Now, one thing that the 190E does come with, it actually has a steering gearbox instead of like a standard normal rack and pinion setup. So one thing that I will do in the future that I saw online people do is they remove the steering gearbox setup and actually put steering rack from a 400E in it, and everything bolts right up, and then you're able to have a normal power steering system like you would on a more modern car. Now on the engine side, it's obviously just a stock 2.6 inline-six right now. Plan to put an LS in it. I know it's the common thing, go with an LS power plant, but I'm a huge GM guy. I've owned GMs, Corvettes, Camaros. I do trust the GM motors, so the plan is to stuff an LS3 in here. I managed to find some people online that have done LS swaps in these, although it's rare. That will be a whole journey in itself, and there will be future videos on that of trying to make it all work. I have most of the technicalities for the clutch and the standalone and everything else I'll have to do to make it work already worked out in my mind. The whole ABS system is out. We'll be doing a video also on removing ABS and installing a hydraulic e-brake onto the car. Another thing that I wanted to focus on was aesthetics. I think that the 190E is one of those designs. It's a timeless car. It's a car that even in 20 years from now will still look good. I mean, that's my opinion, but of course, as expected for the US market versus the Euro market, we did get different parts for various reasons, as we always do. So one thing that the car does have is European E-codes, and what I did was actually take them apart and put some yellow reflective vinyl for the fog lights, so it does have yellow fog lights. I think that looks much better. It gives it that proper European look. Another thing that I did a lot of work on, which was kind of something I've never done before on a car, countless cars I've had in the past, but this car had a gray interior. Now for a race car, for some reason, to me personally, a gray interior, it just doesn't work. So what I did, instead of trying to go online and try to source door cards and everything else black, to have a black interior, because that is expensive and immensely hard to find, I decided to try something different and actually bought vinyl and carpet dye and dyed, removed the part, the whole interior, pulled it all apart and dyed it black. You can see the door cards are now black. I did not make a video on removing them. It's pretty straightforward. You have bolts here, you pop this out, and it is pretty straightforward for removing it. And the dye that I got is actually VHT, and so far so good. It seems to be really easy to apply, and it dries to the touch within minutes, so you could work with it or touch up any areas pretty easily. But I'm pretty happy with the result. I don't know what the long term will be like. That remains to be seen, but the whole interior has now been done in black. And then I did want to retain the rear seats for it, at least for now, till I get a roll cage, so I did dye those red to give it a little bit of an accent. This area I couldn't reuse, so I had to rewrap it myself with some vinyl. It turned out halfway decent, but as expected, it is hard to work with. Another thing that I did is I bought a different steering wheel for the car. This one actually is made for a 190E, and it comes with a hub and everything else. And that one actually came from Lithuania, and I had to wait, I think, a month and a half for it to come in with all these COVID restrictions. I did get rid of all the wood trim and wrapped it in carbon fiber. It's also pretty straightforward. If anybody ever wants me to make a video on it, I can, but it is pretty easy to do. But even the deck lid and everything else, all this stuff was gray. That is now black, and I'm very happy, honestly, with the result of it. Now, also in the previous video, I mentioned the wheels that I have for this car and that the front tires don't fit. These are the wheels that we burnt off, or the tires that we burnt off in the previous video, the C63. And as you could tell, they're pretty burnt up. but most people say there's still life left in them to burn them up some more. I did not want to take that chance, considering that the C63 is a very nice car and it was in good shape, and the last thing I needed was a blowout and mess up the fenders or anything else on the car. And they're too tall for me to be able to reuse. This is a much smaller car. These came off, I think, of a CL55 AMG from the early 2000s. And although the lug pattern is the same, the tire height is significantly tall. And when I have the car lowered down to the right height I wanted it, they do rub on the fenders. So instead of the 235/45 that's on there that are now destroyed, I'm going to put a 205/40 to lower it down a little bit and be able to have all the steer angle without rubbing against the fenders or the inner liners. Now, as I mentioned, this is an ongoing project. One of the things I plan to do is put a Evo 2 wide body on the car. Now, there's some available on eBay, and from what I've seen, they are terrible quality and they don't fit very well. So I went as far as getting in contact with a company in Sweden that actually licensed under Mercedes rebuilds the old DTM race cars, and they're willing to sell me a wide body kit. So once I have enough money for that, I will buy an actual certified 190E wide body. And I have focused a lot on aesthetics on it because I want to have a certain look. It is going to be a race car, but I want it to be kind of dual purpose and still be streetable. Probably if I ever do make it up to a competition level, I will have to eliminate a lot of the aesthetic portions of it and cut it up more and relocate radiator to the rear. And you probably saw this in the background throughout the video. This is my 1997 GTI V6 that is an ABT wide body car. And if anybody's ever interested, leave a couple comments. I could do a walk around on this car. I've had it for about 8 years. I haven't done much with it, but I've been holding on to it. It holds a special place in my heart. And it hasn't been even registered for the last 5 years or so, but she still turnkey starts and moves around and has been a great car to me. Other than that, if you do own a 190E and you're interested in what I'm doing and have any pointers or suggestions, I'm always open to it. As I stated in the beginning, it is a car that I've never owned. It is a car I've always wanted, and it is a learning curve. I'm not too familiar with old Mercedes, so I am learning a lot. I've done a lot with other old European cars like Audis and VWs, but the 190E is a new challenge for me, so I'm more than welcome accepting suggestions. You can put them in the comments about things I can do differently, maybe different parts vendors, or maybe there are people that you know of that do make angle kits or any type of racing parts for these. Same with roll cages or anything else. As far as I've been able to find, I will have to find somebody to do a custom roll cage, and I have found people that are within an hour of me that do build custom roll cages for race cars, for Rally of America cars, and so on and so forth. But outside from buying one from Australia that's pre-made that you have to weld in yourself, I could not find anything online. So if you have a 190E and have done a lot of work with them, I'm always welcoming suggestions, ideas. Feel free to comment. I won't take any offense. If you don't like what I'm doing, I'll still take those comments, because it is something that I am experimenting with, and I'm hoping one day will be a fantastic car. Again, thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing, commenting, liking. It does help my channel grow. It does help me make better content for everybody. So, till next time.